You see, when you grow up watching movies, it's easy to think that everything in Hollywood is make-believe. Action, romance, drama, it all feels scripted, even the lives of the people in it. But there was something about Denzel Washington that never felt like acting. He didn't just play the part. He carried truth in every word, every pause, every stare. He moved with intention, spoke with clarity, stood with conviction. And that authenticity, that integrity, it made me pause, it made me wonder, what kind of man moves through a world of applause and temptation, and still walks with his head high, his soul intact? I started listening more closely, not just to his roles, but to his interviews, to the way he talked about prayer, about discipline, about giving glory to God. Denzel didn't just sprinkle a little faith into his sentences. No, he lived it, not for the cameras, not for the claps, but because it was part of his core. And suddenly, I started seeing something I hadn't before, a Hollywood icon who wasn't chasing stardom, but seeking something higher. That caught me, that challenged me, because here was a man surrounded by power, privilege, and prestige, and still he turned his eyes upward. Every single time. Now, I wasn't raised Muslim. I didn't know much about Islam growing up. But Denzel's consistency made me question my own assumptions. He talked about values, about serving others, about the importance of staying grounded. And the more I looked into it, the more I found those same messages echoed in Islam. The discipline of prayer, the call to charity, the strength found in submission, not weakness, but strength in letting go of ego. It wasn't about fear. It was about purpose. You can't fake purpose. You can't pretend peace. And Denzel, he wasn't performing. He was living it. He showed me that being spiritual wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, being grateful, being real. And when someone like him shows you that kind of example, you stop brushing past religion like it's a museum piece. You start leaning in, listening, learning. So yeah, his journey through Hollywood, through faith, didn't just inspire, it redirected me. It made me look at Islam not as an outsider looking in, but as a seeker looking up. And that shift changed everything. And in that moment, I realized faith isn't about where you come from. It's about where you're going. Now let me tell you something real. We live in a world where people love labels. They love putting you in a box. Christian, Muslim, spiritual, atheist. Like it's something you wear to impress. But when I watched how Denzel Washington moved through the noise, the interviews, the red carpets, the talk shows, something hit me deep. He never wore faith like fashion. He wore it like armor. He didn't brag about it. He lived it, quietly, boldly, humbly. And that made me think, maybe I've been looking at religion the wrong way. Maybe it's not about the label you wear. Maybe it's about the values you live. Because when Denzel talked about life, he talked about God. Not just when it was comfortable, not just when the cameras were rolling, but when it counted. And not just his God. He spoke with a kind of reverence that crossed boundaries. That kind of faith, it's universal, and it opens something in me. See, for a long time, I thought religion was this rigid thing, full of rules, borders, and them versus us. But here was a man, standing tall in his own beliefs, and yet never once putting others down. I started asking, what's the truth behind all this? And more than that, am I living it? That question led me to Islam. Not through an argument, not through debate, but through example, through watching someone live with integrity, humility, and purpose. That's what Denzel did. And when I started reading about Islam, not the headlines, not the stereotypes, but the real teachings, I saw something familiar: submission to a higher power, respect for parents, charity, accountability, gratitude. The idea that this life is a test, not a party, not a performance, but a test. All of that? It sounded like what he'd been saying for years, and I thought, if someone can believe so deeply, love so boldly, and respect others so consistently, maybe faith isn't something that divides us. Maybe it's something that reveals us. Denzel didn't push religion, he reflected it. And that reflection made me see Islam not as something foreign, but as something profoundly human, profoundly real. And man, once your heart sees truth, it can't unsee it. You know, the more I watch Denzel Washington, the more I realize that there's a huge contrast in his life. A contrast that many of us might overlook. Here's a man who could have everything, the fame, the fortune, the applause, the red carpets. But instead of feeding into all of that, the flashing lights, the cameras, the accolades, he seemed to shrink away from it. He never let it define him. It was like he understood something the world often forgets. That real success isn't in the applause you get, but in the peace you feel inside. It made me wonder, what does it take to live like that? To be in the spotlight, truly in it, but not be consumed by it? Hollywood is all about more. More money, more fame, more attention. It's a place where people can lose themselves. But here's Denzel, surrounded by it all, and yet he's still grounded, still humble, still with his feet on the ground. There was something about that that really stuck with me, because it made me think, what if humility isn't a weakness, but the truest form of strength? That's when I started seeing the deeper layers of his character. Denzel wasn't just an actor. He was a man who knew that the real battle in life isn't with your external circumstances, it's with your inner peace. And that peace? It's hard to find in a world that's constantly telling you to hustle, to climb, to be somebody. But Denzel, he had already figured it out. His fame was a tool, not an identity. He was someone who gave glory to God first, even when the world told him he should be taking the glory for himself. And here's where Islam helped me understand his journey. The idea of humility in Islam isn't about downgrading yourself. It's about knowing your place. It's about recognizing that everything you have is a blessing. And that belief doesn't come from a place of weakness. It comes from strength. Strength to remain humble, to acknowledge your creator, and to serve others without needing validation. So I started to realize something. True strength isn't about pushing people down so you can climb. True strength is about building others up while remaining grounded in who you are. And I think that's what Denzel was showing us all along. He wasn't just playing a role in front of the camera. He was living his truth. Humility was his shield. It was his armor in a world that often tries to convince you that you need to be bigger, better, louder. This idea of humility, combined with purpose, spoke to me in a way I didn't fully understand until I took a deeper look at Islam. I realized that both Islam and Denzel's life shared the same theme. True peace comes from submitting to a higher purpose, from seeing yourself as part of a larger plan, not the center of it. The humility he showed wasn't about being less. It was about being more in tune with what really matters. And that humility? That's what allowed Denzel to stay above the noise. It allowed him to move with grace through a world that constantly demands more. And that's the kind of peace I wanted in my life. One thing that really stood out to me about Denzel Washington is how quietly but firmly he practiced interfaith respect. He never shouted about it, never made a spectacle out of it. But there was something in his words and actions that made it clear. His faith was not a wall that separated him from others. It was a bridge, and that kind of respect, that kind of openness, was a game changer for me. See, in a world that often divides us by what we believe, Denzel showed me that true faith doesn't look at the labels. It sees the human spirit. He had a way of talking about his own beliefs with pride, without ever diminishing the beliefs of others. And that made me pause. Because I had grown up in a world where religion often felt like an argument, a fight to prove whose faith was better, whose faith was right. But Denzel, he didn't engage in that. He didn't need to. His faith spoke for itself. And in that silence, he taught me something important. Respect isn't about agreeing with everyone. It's about acknowledging their right to believe. So I started paying attention. Not just to Denzel's interviews, but to his interactions with people of different faiths. I watched how he handled questions about religion. He didn't just tolerate other beliefs, he respected them. He didn't dismiss others' paths as wrong, even if they weren't his own. He simply recognized that there's a common thread in every belief, a call to higher ground, a search for truth, a desire for peace. That was revolutionary for me, because it shifted my view on what faith truly is. This respect Denzel showed towards others made me rethink how I viewed Islam. Growing up, I had been taught to see it as other, something different, something foreign. But watching how Denzel practiced interfaith respect, it became clear to me. Faith is not about differences. It's about the things we share, the belief in a higher power, the call to do good in the world, the journey of self-improvement. And in Islam, I saw that same respect for others' beliefs. The Quran itself speaks about respect for people of all faiths. It doesn't demand you force others to believe your way. It demands you treat people with kindness regardless of their path. Denzel's quiet support for this kind of interfaith dialogue reminded me that faith is a personal journey. It's not about pushing your beliefs onto others. It's about walking your path with conviction while letting others walk theirs with respect. That respect, in my eyes, is the true mark of faith. Denzel didn't try to convert anyone. He didn't need to. His life, his words, his actions, his humility was all the invitation anyone needed. It was an invitation to see faith as a journey, not a competition. It was an invitation to explore, to learn, and most importantly, to respect. And when I saw that, I began to understand Islam in a new light. Not as something that should be feared, but as something that should be respected, just like every other genuine faith. It was a call to peace, a call to charity, a call to understanding. And Denzel's example helped me see that. So here's what I learned from him. Faith isn't just about what you believe. It's about how you treat others, no matter where they come from or what they believe. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you give. And when you give it, you open the door to understanding, to peace, and to a deeper connection with the world around you. Let me tell you something. One thing I've always admired about Denzel Washington is his sense of purpose. You don't get to where he's at in life without a deep, unshakable commitment to discipline. And that's something I didn't fully grasp until I started looking at the deeper meaning behind it. Denzel doesn't just wake up and go through the motions. No, he lives with purpose every day. He knows why he's here. And that kind of clarity doesn't just come from talent. It comes from something deeper, something grounded in faith. And that's something I started to see clearly. He talks about discipline all the time, whether it's in his work, in his spiritual life, or in how he treats others. Discipline is at the core. He doesn't give in to distractions. He doesn't let external circumstances knock him off course. He stays focused. And I realized discipline is a spiritual act. It's not just about doing the hard work. It's about having the strength to say no to the things that pull you away from your true path. And when you live like that, when you make your choices intentional, you're not just living for the moment. You're living for something bigger, for a purpose. When I started reflecting on that, I saw how much it mirrored Islamic teachings. Islam isn't just about belief, it's about action. It's about discipline. It's about living with purpose every day. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. It's about the constant struggle to be better, to be more righteous, to serve others, to fulfill the will of God. That's where the power is. Denzel always talks about service, about giving back. And I realize that service is one of the most important aspects of faith. In Islam, service to others is a form of worship. It's not just about doing good when it's convenient. It's about doing good because it's the right thing to do. It's about understanding that your actions matter, not just for you, but for the world. And the more I saw this in Denzel's life, the more I recognized it in the teachings of Islam. But here's the thing. It's not just about doing service for the sake of it. It's about doing it with the understanding that everything we do is part of a bigger picture, a divine purpose. In Islam, this concept is known as niyyah, intention. The idea that everything you do, whether it's work, prayer, or even helping a neighbor, should be done with the purest of intentions, with the belief that you are fulfilling a higher purpose. And I started to see how Denzel's work wasn't just about fame. It wasn't just about winning awards. It was about something greater. He understood his role in the world wasn't just about what he could get. It was about what he could give. That's what discipline and service are really about. They're not just about self-improvement for your own benefit. They're about contributing to something greater. Islam taught me this, and Denzel showed me it's possible to live it. He's not out there searching for approval. He's out there searching for meaning. And that's the kind of purpose I want in my life. Because when you live like that, with discipline, service, and a deep understanding of your divine purpose, nothing can knock you off your path. And if there's anything Denzel has taught me, it's that you have to be intentional. You have to live your life with purpose every day, no matter the noise around you. And that's when everything started to click for me. The teachings of Islam, the discipline of Denzel's life, they were two sides of the same coin. Living with purpose isn't just about achieving worldly success. It's about knowing that every action you take, every word you speak, and every service you give is part of your journey to something greater. I think one of the most profound things I've learned from Denzel Washington is that faith isn't a performance. In the world we live in, it's so easy to get caught up in how things look on the outside. Social media, red carpets, awards, everything is about putting on a show, right? But Denzel, he made me see something different. He doesn't perform his faith, he lives it. And that's a lesson I needed to learn. Faith is not about how many people see you pray, or how much you can quote from scripture. It's not about looking holy on Sundays, or at your best in front of the cameras. No, true faith is something deeper. It's a quiet, personal mission. It's about how you show up when no one is watching. It's about the intention behind your actions, not the applause that follows them. And Denzel, he understood that better than most. As I began to explore Islam more deeply, this truth became even clearer. Islam teaches that faith is something between you and your Creator. It's not about impressing anyone. It's not about looking righteous to the world. It's about your relationship with God. And in the teachings of Islam, you learn that faith isn't a performance. It's a journey. A journey you take with sincerity, with humility, with a heart open to growth. And when I look at Denzel's life, that's what I see. A man who doesn't need the spotlight to validate his faith. He doesn't need to perform for an audience. He's already secure in who he is. His faith is part of his mission in this world. Not something to check off a list, but something to live every day. He's not in it for the recognition, and that's what I respect. That's what struck me the most. I began to realize that faith isn't about impressing others or performing the right way in front of a crowd. It's about staying true to what you believe, even when there's no one there to cheer you on. Islam helped me understand this at a deeper level. The concept of sincerity, or ikhlas, is about purifying your intentions, doing everything for the sake of God, not for the praise or the approval of people. It taught me that faith isn't a show. It's a commitment. It's a personal relationship that doesn't need validation from anyone else. And when you understand that, everything shifts. It's not about how many times you've prayed, or how many times you've helped others. It's about the intention behind each act. Are you doing it for God, or are you doing it for the applause? That's the real question. And I saw that in Denzel's life, loud and clear. He's not in it for the applause. He's in it because he knows what's at stake. He's in it because he understands the mission. And that mission isn't to perform for others. It's to perform for God, to serve with purpose, and to live with integrity. I've learned that true faith is personal. It's not a performance, and it doesn't need an audience. You live it every day, in the small choices, in the quiet moments, in the way you treat others. And that's the journey Denzel's life led me to. a journey of self-discovery, of faith, of humility. A journey that doesn't end with a grand performance, but with a quiet, steady mission to grow, and to live a life of purpose. And that, my friends, is what truly matters. Not how you perform for the world, but how you stay true to yourself, to your faith, and to the mission God has set for you.